111. Trump, exactly like history's other thousands of strong men, has begun taking over a free nation at gunpoint. This speech tells you how to stop him. No one else will. Musk's boys just raided 2 government agencies formed and funded by Congress to be independent of, uncontrolled by the chief executive, U.S. Africa Aid and U.S. International Peace Council. Their mandates were coordination of our aid to Africa and support of international peace efforts. Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE kids, who had no legal business destroying any Congress-created agency, executive-led or not, banged on their doors this March of 2024. Get out! We're here to shut you down! Lawyers met them through 1-inch open door. You're breaking congressional and constitutional law, but you're not breaking in here. Door slammed shut. DOGE left, then came back with guns. Open up! Our U.S. Marshals are aiming at you through the door. Needless to say, lethal muscle had its way. The liars were not escorted by U.S. Marshals, but this federal police leadership had responded to Trump's appeals to augment the Musk team's security and power by deputizing the teenage computer hackers, permitting them to bring their own guns. And why not? They had only broken dozens of court orders and scores of laws every day for weeks. What could go wrong with giving untrained, non-government children deadly force against victims that every law forbade them to bully? Armed FBI agents joined the assault on the International Peace Council. Director Kash Patel had promised to make criminals of all Trump's political opposition, opposite of every valid police organization in history, doing their job of stopping real crooks, but definitely not folks your boss just didn't like. In Trump's case, the majority of the entire government he hates and kills. A new mass of citizen and government staff lawsuits against the Musk-Trump escalating, now lethal force coup against congressional and executive government will continue, resulting in their defying many court orders against them, hammering their 3-branch attack insurrection. You do not have 2 years to wait for Democratic control of Congress and their creation of federal law enforcement that America has never had nor never needed until now. Only every 240 years or so will a despot turn every gun he can control on us. Accompany our next 200 lawsuits against crooks Elon and Donald with our demands to enforce them. The first 100 were totally contemptuously flouted. Enforce them how? Before that new police force, that's a tough one. I just read a history of resistance to famous court orders, a number ordering desegregation of schools in the face of massive southern state resistance. Each conflict was resolved without bloodshed by federalizing state National Guards to make them stop obstructing American integration law, or by sending federal troops to overmatch rebellious local police. More of the most flagrant resistance to federal court laws was also overcome with federal executive branch enforcement assistance. These famous cases represented a zillionth of 1% of American court decisions, the rest nearly 100% respected and obeyed by local leaders and institutions, utterly, boringly compliant with government, court, and all other laws. The regular exceptions, all individual criminals, not insurrectionists, all controlled nicely after capture by police, courts, and jails. Now you see our titanic, unprecedented new crisis. Excessive executive power for 238 years was the solution to local defiance of national law. Now, bizarre presidential defiance of Congress, Constitution, and courts is the crisis. No help will be all history's national executive sobriety, responsibility, and power. The unique criminal rebel is now in the White House. That's right. American history's near universal respect and obedience of court orders won't help us now stop the most powerful man in the world spitting on hundreds of federal court and congressional laws. The only future protection and rescue of 340 million Americans from this menace would be that independent, all-federal, government and people, constitutional, American police law enforcement force that cannot be a Justice Department, FBI, or U.S. Marshal Force currently subject to the political hire, fire, manipulate, and order power of the one man with history's greatest opportunities to abuse his near absolute power. How's that for encouragement? Gee, thanks, Steve. With help like yours, I'd be better off in a dark alley getting my ass kicked. All I can say is our every appeal has to say, Judge, please talk to the 50 other judges getting spit on in total defiance. Jefferson said that we must alter any government that becomes destructive of our safety to save ourselves. Stevie says that means stop 'em. Law we have, enforce. Law we need, make. Equally useless if big shots can defy it. Democracy dies of dictator power unless we fast grow even more powerful good law. If we survive Trumpism, amend the Constitution to trigger U.S. Marshal, FBI, and American Armed Forces subservience to federal and Supreme Court direction in the specific and temporary instance of presidential defiance of court orders, or his insurrectionist direction of FBI, U.S. Marshals, or the military to illegally attack the American government or people. Indeed, I propose that so many federal court judges collaborate on present tense crisis orders to direct enforcement duties of those three powers and all necessary Washington, D.C. and outside municipal and state police too. That even Trump's corrupt Supreme Court majority would think more than twice before spitting on 100 federal court laws just to lick the boots of King Donald. You and your family will suffer and die without necessary law enforced. Virtually every analyst agrees that Trump issuing and carrying out dozens of unconstitutional executive orders, destroying soon-to-be hundreds of thousands of government jobs, equally abusing that many dedicated to public service people, not to mention the hundreds of millions they served and helped, and the criminal president flagrantly flouting dozens of court orders to stop this shit, all confirms the depths of our constitutional crisis, deeply threatening to end our constitutional democracy. Each wise analyst speaks a couple of lines about what stiffed judges might try. Convict him of contempt of court. Normally a federal prison felony, but won't his Supreme Court lackeys endorse his pardons of himself? Haven't they already declared him immune from prosecution of all minor little offenses that he claims central to his magnificent responsibilities clearly including atom bombing 238-year-old American democracy dead and gone. These media experts report that courts technically have the power to enlist federal marshals for enforcement of their orders when defied. However, the principal court defier has already coerced his federal marshals to deputize Musk's teenager computer hackers to break into government offices waving their own guns. The invaded U.S. Institute for Peace summoned Washington, D.C. police, who instead came over to escort the armed attackers inside, then obeyed Musk's juvenile delinquents' demand to throw the no longer independent, congressionally authorized agency directors and staff out of their own building and work forever. At this juncture, every media sage gives the doomed public our final options: pray and grieve. Stick a fork in us. We're cooked and done. Roll over and die. Well, not yet. It gets a lot worse. 100 more court orders will be burned and stomped on. Then a dozen 5-4 Supreme Court decisions will say, "Fine with us, the king can do no wrong." Then Trump will dirty money primary blackmail his two tiny legislator majorities to vote most of his government murder new law. What do we do to save us? Plenty. Join street demonstrations. Serbia's autocrat cozies up to Vladimir Putin, pleasing a full 3% of his population, just like Trump encourages Russian savaging of Ukraine with the endorsement of 3% of Americans. 500,000 of Serbia's 7 million massed in the capital to demand good, not evil government. Serbia's president may not survive that much public protest sustained. President Trump's every major cabinet leader was chosen to reject the entire judicial branch like him. His Homeland Security director said, "I don't care what judges say, we're coming." Often Trump makes his press secretary say, "Judges have no right or power to stop us." They're dead right until somebody builds their power. Who dat? You must make clear to every person in a position of public power to make a difference, to achieve, with enough other lawmakers, our rescue. Tell them, you must work for enforcement of our federal court orders and lobby the Supreme Court to empower democracy and disempower autocracy, as they swore on a Bible to do. Or our Both People's Parties movement will replace every one of you wimpy, corrupt, suicidal, selfish fools with gutsy constitutionalists. We're going to kick your sorry butts into retirement on every single primary and general election day. File endless suits for redirecting all U.S. Marshal, all police, and all military duties and personnel to the defense of American law and American citizen freedom, protection, and benefit. Absolutely no national or local armed forces ever again available to enforce autocrats' crushing of us, democracy's owners, directors, and beneficiaries. America was one, created and designed to end violent royalty over loving humanity. When do we celebrate final victory? Never. Federal marshals by new clear law must receive a mandate to enforce all federal law. While every law-abiding chief executive may direct them to enforce any federal law, Likewise, every federal court is also now and must be more empowered to enforce their law upon every single one of 340 million Americans as needed. Not one, especially the most powerful man in history, above any law or exempted from its enforcement. This one most dangerous man in history must lose 100% of his command of marshals, cops, and soldiers whenever federal courts rule against his efforts to order them to further empower his adjudicated against law-breaking or refusal of court orders against his illegal behavior. My previous speeches demand strict confines of martial law to necessary rescue, never violent abuse, enslavement, or murder of citizens. We, never autocrats, must remain in charge of self-government that we approve defense of against natural disasters, anarchy, violent revolution, and above all against some damn Hitler jumping on us. This spring, Trump has perpetrated massive government robbery and tyranny by declaring 8 different emergencies, every one a total lie to gain new executive powers. Many new laws are needed to stop this. Currently, close to half of Americans believe Trump's lies that his destruction of American constitutional government help of us is really just elimination of fraud and waste. Certainly not just stealing our money for his millionaire and billionaire pals. Never mind the smoke and gun proof of that illegal physical destruction and the years ahead orders of his party's permanent removal of our services and trillions soon handed to his top 1% masters. Who was P.T. Barnum referring to when he said, "No one ever went broke underestimating the intelligence of the American people"? Every private family lover and genius never apprised of public abuse history and forever horrible potential. All of us never inspired to demand that our family love also become government law. Why are we in such trouble now? Only the lonely, unknown Stevies telling you the truth, which dies unless you open your mouth. We're dead unless somebody speaks up. Somebody multiplies, hits the politicians, hits the courts, and hits the town halls, streets, and capitals of every state and the Washington, D.C. seat of American government. Does it bother you? Does it anger you as much as me that 100% of media analysts who report that after 238 years of American obedience of federal court rulings, suddenly dozens in a row are spit on by the most powerful man in the world? All only say, "Oh well, no enforcement do we suggest, expect pending, or believe possible." In our history's worst constitutional crisis, let's all sit back and do nothing while the tyrant finishes savaging our democracy to death in the next eye blink of time. Yes, the courts technically, legally have access to federal marshals for virtually never needed until now enforcement. But get real. The perp, the towering crook himself, is their steady commander-in-chief. No founder imagined this situation. If they had, they would have ruled in the Constitution that courts must have enforcement power, while a criminal president must not be given the legal, physical, armed power to destroy legislative and judicial justice. They did know then, as we must remember now, that 10,000 years of tyrants all crushed humanity, utterly above any humane law. to inflict upon us only their might is right law of the jungle. Their despot dictator, King George III, they threw off to create the democracy that inspired 100 more. Apparently, Franklin, Adams, Jefferson, and Hancock did not learn what Donald Trump teaches us now, that no American Justice Department or Supreme Court, obviously subject to domination by the occasional chief executive with emperor-level ambition, must ever be permitted to elevate the already most powerful man in the world above and beyond accountable penalty for breaking public government laws, or refuse to empower courts and citizens to enforce those laws, to stop even the man in command of marshals and soldiers. Such command removed the instant he breaks his oath to obey and execute our laws. Fail this, Americans, and total power will boom in 2025 to make Donald Trump the scorched earth king for life that our founders thought they forever banned from our shores. Only one founder got it right, and only in his declaration that inspired, if not completed, our Constitution's force of law. He told us, no founder's timeless law, but only your timely repairs, rescues, reforms, and alterations. All of your centuries ahead interventions can and someday surely must restore and keep our democratic republic.